Coming up, a First Nations artist honors her ancestors, and we get a glimpse of the draft report from the UN's Permanent Forum on Indigenous Issues. Plus, sacred land is in danger in Nebraska. I am Aaliyah Chavez. Join us for those interviews, plus headlines from the ICT Newscast.
The Walter Cronkite School of Journalism and Mass Communication at Arizona State University is a proud supporter of Indian Country Today. Students at Cronkite News and Gaylord College at the University of Oklahoma cover Indigenous communities together. This important work is distributed by more than 100 news organizations. This collaboration provides a much-needed boost to coverage of Native American communities nationwide. Learn more at cronkitenews.azpbs.org.
This is the ICT Newscast with Aaliyah Chavez.
Ku'watsi Hopa. Thank you for joining us. We start on the East Coast, where a former Mashpee Wampanoag chairman is being convicted in a casino bribery case. Last week, Cedric Cromwell was found guilty on bribery and extortion charges. The charges were related to the tribe's long-planned casino project. Federal prosecutors argued that Cromwell accepted $10,000 and luxury gifts from David DeQuatro. DeQuatro is the owner of an architecture firm in Rhode Island and Cromwell's co-defendant. DeQuatro received nearly $5 million in casino project contracts as an exchange for the money and gifts. Following the conviction, DeQuatro's legal team said they'll be seeking a complete acquittal for their client. Cromwell was removed as chairman after his indictment in 2020, and he has denied seeking or accepting bribes. Both will face sentencing in September. Main Hall at the University of Montana was lit red last week. It was one of many events bringing awareness to a crisis in Indigenous communities. ICT's Colby Kickingwoman has this report.
She went missing almost 4 years ago today.
Relatives of Jermaine Charlos broke through tears. The 23-year-old was last seen in a bar in downtown Missoula in the summer of 2018. Her family continues to search for answers.
I wish I could tell everybody here that after 4 years, this gets easier. Talking about her gets easier, and it's not.
Jermaine's story is one of many highlighted at this rally, bringing awareness to missing and murdered Indigenous people. Advocates here remembered other victims, and they talked through the heavy emotions of losing a loved one.
It sometimes feels really hopeless, and it's heavy.
As we miss those who were taken, missing, or murdered, as we miss them dearly, I'm sure they miss us too. So talk to them, think good thoughts for them, and pray for them.
Community advocates like Lauren Small Rodriguez say they came out to remember relatives like Hannah Harris. The Northern Cheyenne citizen was found murdered in 2013, but her legacy lives on. Hannah's relatives worked with lawmakers to pass a day of recognition on May 5th as MMIW Awareness Day.
For Hannah Harris, this is her birthday. This is her 30th birthday she would have been, and so this is a solidarity movement, and we're honored to be a part of it.
Now, events like this one in Montana are one of many held across the country on May 5th. In Missoula, Montana, Colby Kickingwoman for ICT News.
Tribal colleges and universities are once again getting ready to honor the hard work and commitment of graduates. One example is the Nuetza Hidatsa Sathnish College in North Dakota. It will hold its graduation this week, and the commencement will be highlighted with a keynote from North Dakota State Representative Ruth Buffalo. She told ICT she is excited to speak to the spring graduates.
I have a special place in my heart for our tribal colleges and universities, and used to work and teach and coach at United Tribes Technical College for 7 years. So I love our TCUs, and it's just a great, humongous honor for me to be asked to say a few words and to be a part of the college, the community, the family, and the students and faculty, their special day. So yeah, I'm just super excited.
Buffalo is the first Democratic Indigenous woman elected to the North Dakota House. She is a citizen of the Mandan, Hidatsa, and Arikara Nation. Twyla Baker, the college's president, shared why the lawmaker was selected.
She speaks up for the marginalized. And that includes, whether you're talking about, lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, two-spirit, queer, or if you're talking about, missing and murdered Indigenous women, refugees, everybody that needs a hand. And that is so incredibly traditional for us as MHA Nation.
The ceremony is scheduled for May 13th and will take place at the MHA Interpretive Center in Newtown, North Dakota. In Kansas, Congresswoman Sharice Davids is getting creative about addressing policy. Last week, she worked a shift with shipping company UPS. She said delivery drivers have been on the front lines of the supply chain issues, so she joined UPS driver Jeff for a shift unloading boxes. Davids said one of the main issues of the supply chain is a shortage in drivers. And those are the headlines for the ICT Newscast. Coming up, a proposed development endangers sacred land in Nebraska, and more from the UN Permanent Forum on Indigenous Issues. But first, an Anishinaabe artist honors her ancestors through adornment. Stay with us. The New York Times and Travel Alberta, Canada are just a few places Jamie Campbell's art has been featured. She is the designer behind White Otter Design Company. The Anishinaabe artist is from Curve Lake First Nation. Jamie, it's great to have you here. Thank you for being here.
Anine, hello. Thank you so much for having me.
So first off, tell us about your company and the products that you feature.
Yeah, so I do beadwork primarily. It was never intended, I guess, to start as a company, but I kind of evolved to go that way. But I do kind of heirloom jewelry and mostly, and I'm working on some visual arts projects right now and into a little bit of textile work.
Many of the products that you feature on your website are actually made from natural materials. Tell us why that's important for you to make a decision like that to put into your artwork.
Yeah, I wanted to focus. It was really important to me to focus on sustainability and to focus on slow fashion and to really have my company and the work that I was doing also support community. And so I use a lot of home tan moose hide and elk hide that is tanned by expert tanners who've been doing it for their whole lives. And it was important to me to sort of feed into that really traditional economy.
Yeah, and we hear that so often from artists, right? They say, like, this is how my ancestors made their artwork. And it sounds like that's something that you're also trying to continue as well.
Absolutely. That's incredibly important to me. And I tanned my first hide start to finish about 2 years ago now. And it was probably the first time in about 50 years that anyone in my family had tanned a hide. And it was incredible.
Where did you learn that practice from?
I used to live in a Cree community in northern Alberta, and they still tan a lot of hides very often. And so it was just, I learned to spend time there and just over the years, I learned very slowly, and I'm very grateful for that gift.
One of the things I wanted to ask you about is the way that you market your products. I saw on your Instagram page that you have several thousand followers, and it seems like social media is a really popular way to market items nowadays. Tell us about, what kinds of creativity goes into that.
Yeah, social media can be a challenge because I find it's changing and evolving so much all the time. And I really like to spend my time actually doing the work, but I love the community that we've built up across the social media platforms. And, I have friends that I've made for life that I've met online, but really just sharing the process and sharing the materials and having it, we're marketing our products, but we're also providing a lot of education. And I think that's really important.
Yeah. Talking about education, it looks like as if people who buy your products are both Native and non-Native.
For sure. Yes. And I hope at least that when, non-Indigenous people are purchasing the work, it goes a long way, I think, to having discussions about reconciliation and learning those different processes and really supporting Indigenous made art.
You said earlier that you never thought that you would own a company, a formal company for your beadwork. Tell us what it's like to, operate a small business like that. What goes into it that people don't really know about?
Oh, wow. It's a lot of work. I used to work for chief and council, and I worked 80 hours a week, and it was really hectic. And I kind of thought starting my own business, I would maybe work a little less, but you work more. But it's really rewarding too. Like, we do all of our own kind of marketing and shipping, and we have to have all the supplies to do all of our shipping, and we have to kind of be constantly sourcing and resupplying different like findings. I use a lot of antique and vintage beads. And so, sourcing those and talking to tanners and making sure you're getting hides at the right season so they're the right thickness. And there's tons of moving parts.
Talk about the team that helps you sustain all of that work. How big is it?
It's just me. It's just me. I'm really hoping this year to be able to bring somebody on, hopefully a younger person from the community that kind of wants to move into this field a little bit maybe. But right now it's just me and a lot of really amazing friends and co-artists online. We support each other.
Oh my goodness. Well, thank you for making the time to talk with us today. I'm very excited, given all the time constraints you probably have. I want to move forward to one last part of the conversation, which is about you teaching others how to make beadwork. Tell us about that. I do teach. I don't teach very often. I really like to teach in scenarios where people are really considering the work that they're doing and how that's been passed down through our families and through our family lines, and people that really want to kind of hold that dear and explore what that means to them and to their families. And so that's the way that I was taught, and it was kind of over a long period of time and in an old school way by a group of elders. And so I really, I try to pass down what they taught me. Yeah, that's really important. I want to actually ask you about the pandemic and how that's affected your creative process. I mean, we're coming out of it at a time now, but, looking back now, how are you feeling going through the pandemic and continuing to make art?
Yeah, I think it was really difficult. At first it was like, oh, we have all this wonderful time at home now. And, everybody really blew up online. And I think there was a real resurgence of beadwork. And then it kind of just got really exhausting because we were alone. And I often think about the work that we do is so dependent on community and being in community. And so to not have that was really a challenge. And so now we're moving into events again together, and I'm really looking forward to it.
Me too. Well, Jamie, thank you so much for being here and for sharing your message today.
Chimigwech.
Indigenous leaders in Lincoln, Nebraska are protesting a proposed development that encroaches on ceremonial grounds in the city. For decades, the fish farm has been the home to a sweat lodge used for prayer ceremonies by the urban Native community. The Catholic Diocese of Lincoln has been working with private investors since 2018 on plans to develop it. The land has been in the city's comprehensive plan for development since 2002. It calls for 162 single-family homes, 134 townhomes, and 205 apartments on just 75 acres. The Niskíthe Prayer Camp was created last week with 7 teepees erected at the site of the proposed development. Joining us are the founders of the camp, Aaron Poor, Renee Sansuchi, and Kevin Abresk. Hello to you all, and thank you for joining us.
Ihani Washte Aliyah, Kevin.
Ayonia. This is Renee.
Osdasanalei. My name is Aaron.
Aaron, let's start with you. Tell us how this development came to be, and why exactly you're there now. We see you in the teepee and protesting this development.
Why we're here is because we have been, what we feel, systematically excluded from a years-long development plan. Native people have been here since time immemorial, and we've been coming to this particular land for salt gathering along the Salt Creek for generations upon generations. More recently, we have been coming to ceremony here at a place called the Fish Farm, to Inipi ceremony, which was established in 1978. This lodge was established in 1978 here by Chief Leonard Crow Dog. And this land has been significant for us for those reasons and so many more. And this development process, which has been in the works the last couple of years, has completely excluded Native people from this entire process. It was only about 3.5 weeks ago that we were notified of this mega development. And that's when we realized our ceremonial grounds are in danger and we have to do something.
Renee, I want to go to you. For our viewers who aren't there in person, describe what the atmosphere is like. What is sort of everyone's feeling there right now?
Well, I think, since day one, everybody has felt very excited about coming out here. And even to today, there's still this feeling that, we're here. We want everyone to know that we're here. And I would say every single day that we've been here, we've had a steady stream of people. And all I've been doing and all that we have been doing as our team is teaching.
Kevin, I want to go to you because the name of this prayer camp is Niskíthe, and it, of course, is a prayer camp. So maybe talk about the importance of doing something like this in an intentional and Indigenous values-led way.
Thank you. So Niskíthe means salt in Umoho, and this area was a convergence point for a lot of different tribal nations because of the Salt Creek River Basin here. People would come from as far away as Iowa, we're told, to come and gather salt. And some of the Omaha women would actually use eagle feathers to pick up the salt along the riverbank, and they'd take it home and they'd use it to cure their meat. So if you can imagine, this is sort of like a demilitarized zone in a way. Everybody would come here and they would camp and they would gather their salt and they'd go back to their respective communities. There's a lot of history here. And so our efforts here have always been done in prayer. And we wanted this to be something that was graceful, that's something that wasn't going to leave a huge imprint on the land out here. We wanted to come out here and take a stand, absolutely, and express our sovereignty, express our resistance. But we also wanted to educate our community about our Native American customs, because in large part what has happened here is because people don't understand our sacred Inipi ceremony. They don't understand just the fact that, we've been having to fight this fight for generations. And we're going to continue to do so as long as we need to.
Renee, I want to go back to you. Kevin just brought up the fact that you want to show awareness to the non-Native community there in Lincoln that you're still here and that you're fighting for a space that is really sacred to you. What has been the reaction from non-Native people who are either driving by or walking by? And, has there been any sort of police action? Have they showed up? What has been going on in that regard?
Well, everyone who's been coming here, especially non-Native, they come up here and they want to know, but they do so with a good heart. And so we sit down in circles and I explain the history, culture, our spirituality, and I'm educating them in everything. And they walk away. Some people break down emotionally and then they leave and they go, I want to do something to help you. So I feel like my message and our message together, we all have our gifts. Our message is to bring about awareness, to dispel stereotypes, to help people understand who we really are here, particularly in Lincoln, Nebraska. And police action, well, I think we had one visit last week and it was very informal. And as far as I know, everything else has been, established in peaceful relations.
Well, that's wonderful to hear. And we'll definitely be checking in with you three again, Aaron, Renee, and Kevin. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you. We blaha.
Oh.
Hello.
The UN Permanent Forum on Indigenous Issues wrapped up in New York City last week. The 11-day event brought leaders together from all across the globe. ICT covered the event as part of the Global Indigenous Affairs Desk. That was a collaboration between GRIST, ICT, and High Country News. Karina Dominguez is back after her coverage. Hi, Karina. Thanks for being here.
Hi, thanks for having me on.
So I understand on Friday there was a draft report that was released. Tell us about what's in it.
Yes, so the draft report was released on Friday. So basically it was adopted by the United Nations Permanent Forum on Indigenous Issues. So that's usually how they wrap up these sessions. They adopt the report. And this is, again, just the draft report. We'll expect a final report later. But our Joseph Lee over at GRIST, he actually wrote an article, kind of summarizes some of the highlights in that report. So if you want to read more, you can learn just by looking up the headline, UN report urges greater protection for Indigenous rights. So again, that's from Joseph Lee, and like you mentioned, we are collaborating with a couple of other organizations on our coverage. So yeah, a few of the highlights there, people are really urging some of these Indigenous leaders for participation, on a national, international level, something that's more enhanced. They just feel like it's a little diluted right now, the way the process is right now. They think there should be, stronger protections for Indigenous rights and, more participation on that international level. So yeah, there's a lot that they were talking about in there. A couple of other key highlights. They have, recommended the World Bank, the Food and Agriculture Organization, and some other UN agencies cooperate with the Permanent Forum on Indigenous Issues. They want to study FPIC practices and whatnot globally to disseminate, more successful experiences for people, is what they say. So that's something they're going to look at. They're trying to put a deadline on that for 2025. Another key highlight, they want to grant clemency to Leonard Peltier. So he's been in prison since 1977. So that's something that they're also looking into. Another, recommendation from one of these regional meetings was to develop standards and mechanisms for conservation programs that affect Indigenous people. So, a lot of these things are very specific, very pointed to, specific regions and specific people and the different issues that they're dealing with.
You, of course, said this is a draft report. So what comes next for this report to be adopted?
Right. So, obviously there's a review process. So it'll take a few more weeks until we get to that point of, getting a new report adopted. But, there was some, really great things, a lot of good efforts. It was great, being at the forum, being able to talk to different, leaders, and specifically, talking about the Indigenous languages and the efforts to revitalize them globally. The Taino people, they're doing a lot to revitalize the classic Taino language. So they say that's basically an offshoot or from the same branch as the Arawakan language, which is, known to be in South America. So a really cool things going on there. A lot of different efforts, especially Cherokee. They had, led some efforts as well.
Karina, we only have about 30 seconds left, but tell us what you're working on next.
Yes. So, I had mentioned the previous times I was on about the situation in Colombia. So I actually wrote an article that goes really in depth on what's going on there. What are some of the issues these people are facing? Why did they have to come to the UN to advocate? So if you could, keep an eye out for that, that'll be out in the future. But I do have a video to show you for right now.
Maria Violette Medina Quisque traveled to New York City from Bogota amid the pandemic to raise awareness around the humanitarian crisis in Colombia. At the 21st session of the UN Permanent Forum on Indigenous Issues, she talked about the 2,000 Indigenous people living at a resistance camp in Bogota National Park after fleeing legal and illegal mining projects and violent paramilitary groups. When the camp first set up in September, Bogota Mayor Claudia Lopez welcomed them, Quisque says, but eventually stopped communicating with them. She was surprised to know Lopez was in New York for the Permanent Forum.
How does that make you feel to see that she won't talk to the Indigenous people in Bogota, but now she's here in New York City?
Pues es muy duro porque
it's very difficult because both the district government and the national government have come into these big governmental spaces to basically lie and not recognize what the reality is of Indigenous people within Colombia.
Quisque and her associates say they ran into Lopez at the UN headquarters and she agreed to meet with them, but never showed up.
Indigenous people need to unite to be able to care properly for our Mother Earth and to show our little seeds, some of who haven't even been born yet, that the world, we matter in the world. We are so very, very important to the health and beauty of this planet.
After leaders issued an international press release in English, the UN ambassador in New York and district officials in Bogota agreed to meet with Quisque and the other leaders the very next day.
Well, Karina, thank you so much for being here and for your reporting.
Thank you.
And that's a slice of our Indigenous world. For more news, visit IndianCountryToday.com. From all of us in the newsroom, stay safe, my relatives. I am Aaliyah Chavez.
Sometimes you got to take a stand just because you know you can. Oh, you got to run, you got to run.